All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I am Len Augsburger. I'll be interviewing Gerry Fortin this evening regarding the sale of his collection and his history as a collector. Um, I've got some set questions, and then at the end we'll open it for other questions as well. So let's jump in here. So first off, the elephant in the room. Um, when I offer coins to other collectors, they always want to know, hey Len, why are you selling this? And I think they want me to tell them that it's a bad coin, or I'm desperately in need of cash, and I'll take whatever low amount they offer me for it. Um, Coin dealers tend not to work like that. It's just pass or play. Do you need the coin or not? There's not a lot of chit chat or trying to figure out why somebody is selling something. People are too busy for that. But anyway, so let's get this out in the open. Why is Gerry selling his dimes right now?
Well, the standard answer I give everybody, it was time. That's the long and short. But let's get into the details. So, I've been building this collection for a long time. It started in earnest in the mid 1990s. And come 2005, when Gene Gardner stepped into the market, it was impossible for me to take the collection uh, to the next level. So I kind of put it in the background. And once I started up the GFRC business, I used the business to sell all of the holdered reference collection dimes. And there was a lot of them. And that became a cash pool. And that cash pool was used to do upgrading. I was a big player in the Tom Bender sale because there were some later dates that I had not put a lot of emphasis on. And I used that cash to upgrade those. But now I'm to the point where nearly all of the reference collection pieces have been sold. So my numismatic capital source has pretty well dried up. And upgrades now are getting very, very expensive. Uh, and also, there's not a lot out there that gets me excited based on the current collection. So it was time. And there's a lot of money tied up in this collection. I'm 68, and there's other things I'd like to pursue in life. As I said at the LSCC meeting, in October, I went out to uh, Oklahoma City and went to racing school and had a ball. And one of the first things I'm going to do after the first session and some cash comes in is I'm buying myself a sports car. And I'm trying to figure out which one it's going to be.
All right.
So, yeah, I see some thumbs up here. But yeah, it's, you're 68, and how many years are you going to have to be able to have some fun like that after working my whole life?
Mhm.
So that's pretty well the situation. It was time to sell it. I'm also big on accountability. I built it. It's my responsibility to sell it. And who else is better to sell the collection than me?
So there's kind of another dynamic there. So you have this very large variety collection, you have this very large frontline collection, and you decide, okay, I'm going to start selling off all the variety coins. Was part of your thinking there that you had maybe taken your study of varieties about as far as it was going to go?
Oh, absolutely. It was pretty clear. Once the web book was released in 2004, there was a period of intense crowdsourcing where many, many people stepped forward with new varieties. So for a couple of years, it was beautiful because the online web book, I could just continue to add these varieties as they surfaced. That has diminished now to the point where people approach me on a common date, like an 1883, and they see something. I have no enthusiasm to do that because, frankly, nobody cares.
Yeah.
At least I don't, because I've been so busy running the GFRC. I mean, if I was bored to death, yeah, sure. But my situation is such where I I I just don't have the energy to pursue any more varieties. So
Mhm.
to me, the web book is pretty well done.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's go back to the very beginning. How did you get introduced to numismatics, and from there, how did you get involved with seated dimes?
Okay. Well, like everybody else, when I was a kid, I shoveled snow and mowed lawns when I was young, raised a little bit of money, and I had, some very basic penny and nickel and dime collections. And that lasted till I hit high school, and then I figured out that girls were much more attractive than coins. I think like we all do, we go through that cycle. And the collection just went dormant. My mother put the coins away in the attic. And believe me, back then it was very modest means. I did not grow up in, let's put it this way, in a rich family.
Hmm.
All right. So come 1987, uh, we're at a Christmas party at Diane's family, and Diane's mother had purchased, probably from one of the TV channels, rolls of Morgan dollars.
Mm.
And she gave each of the children a roll of Morgan dollars. So Diane opens it up, looks at it, hands it to me. And I looked at it and I said, holy shit, this is exciting. And when I was a kid, I could not afford a Morgan dollar. It was just beyond my means. So I was pretty excited about that. And so the first half of 1988, I was collecting Morgan dollars. And that didn't last long because there was no challenge. You go to a coin show, there's Morgan dollars everywhere.
Yep.
And so come the middle of 1988, I says, I want to collect something significant with historical value. And I'd always been excited, consumed with Civil War history. Had a number of books on the Civil War. So I said, let me look at Liberty seated coinage. So one evening, I pulled out the red book and I went through all the denominations. And by process of elimination, based on my budget, the amount of key dates, and because if I start something, I'm going to finish a set. So I looked at the halves, and 78S was impossible. So I said, can't do the halves. The quarters looked way, way too hard. And the half dimes were too small. So it was the dimes. So I just said, that's it. I'm doing dimes. It was that kind of decision. And then I started going to coin club meetings in Lewiston, Auburn, and seeing what those part-time dealers had for dimes. I bought a few, and then there was a guy who owned Maine Gold and Silver named Bob Levy, and Bob, he was Italian. He was a very fiery individual. And I walked in there and I said, I'm collecting seated dimes. He goes, oh, you are? He says, I got a whole collection I want to sell, his personal collection.
Wow.
So he goes out back in the safe and pulls it out and shows it to me. And I'm going like, hey, Bob, I just got started, and I don't have a huge amount of money. He goes, that's okay. Just pick out the ones you want. We'll put them in envelopes because they're all raw. We'll put them in an envelope, put them in a box, and you come in and every week you buy one. All right. So that's how I got started. So come then in early 1989, I joined the Liberty Seated Collector Club. And then there was this really monumental experience. In Coin World, I saw an ad for KMR Wash's encyclopedia. So I ordered the encyclopedia. It came in, and I opened it up, and I saw the first pass of dive varieties, and I was just addicted. It was just like something, a switch flicked, and I looked at it and I said, "Holy crap! This is what I want to do." And when I joined the LSCC, I wrote about varieties. So John McCloskey put me in touch with Brian Greer. And Brian Greer at that time was doing a population survey, and he needed somebody to be the gopher, to handle all the survey inputs,
Yeah,
do the tabulations, and to help write the articles. So that's how I got my start.
yeah. Do you have any recollection of what the first seeded dime you acquired was?
Uh, nope.
Prob-
Nope. I can say that if you look in my set, the 1840 drapery dime in AU 55 CAC was one of the first dimes I bought at a coin club meeting in Lewiston, Auburn. And to this day, I never found a mint state example that excited me enough to sell that one. So that was in the very early days. So that was one of the better purchases I made. I think I paid $125 for it raw.
So after you got the Eyewash book, are you systematically collecting dye varieties? Are you looking for new ones?
Uh, Starting to. Uh, when I got hooked up with Brian Greer, Brian was working on his book, that he published in 1992. So I hooked up with Brian in 1990, and I told him that I was starting to look for new varieties, and I found a bunch, like the 1859 MPD. I found that one. I found a bunch more, and I gave them to Brian, and he put some of them in his book, and we built that relationship over time.
Sure. Okay, so you're starting to build a pretty substantial dime set, working on varieties, and at some point this turns from a hobby into somewhat of an investment. Now we see a lot of billionaire collectors all buy the best coins, and that's great. I think it's good for the market, it's good for collectors. But when you're starting small, it takes a little bit more cojones to put what ends up being a sizable percentage of your net worth into your collection. Especially coming from a blue collar background. So the other thing going on here is you're in the tech business. It's, the beginning of the 1990s. We're like on the greatest bull run of the stock market of all time, all tech driven. And so there's a lot of possibilities there. But even looking at that, you decided you were going to put a lot of your personal money into the seated dime set. So what was your thinking there in the early 90s?
Well, in the early 1990s, I was absolutely consumed with my semiconductor career. I did not have a lot of time to look at investing on a personal basis. You have to realize in in 1990, so a little history here. So I started working for Fairchild Schlumberger in 1986. And in 87, Fairchild was sold to National Semiconductor. So I ended up moving to National Semiconductor. And in that time frame, I was essentially the father of the yield enhancement systems for the company. So I'd come out of IBM. I had seen some incredible technology that the commercial semiconductor companies only dreamed of having. So I built it. I built it inside Fairchild and National. I had an organization of like 4 programmers, And we designed all these analytical tools. And what we did, we had a massive database that stored all the factory information. So all the process equipment information, all the test information. And we were able to analyze that and figure out how to remove defects out of the semiconductor process. So that was pretty intense. And then after that, I ran a semiconductor fab for like 6 months, which was a most miserable time of my life. Running a semiconductor fab is tough. And then after that, I was off managing test operations in Maine and Penang, Malaysia. So I was really busy in the semiconductor world, and the die variety research was my stress relief. I'd come home at night, and in the late evenings, there was my microscope and my database, and I was just collecting information and starting to build the die variety tables. So at that time, investing was not a primary thought. I was hell bent on building a die variety book equivalent to Overton for the seated dimes. That was the model. And in 1997, a subset of National broke away from the company. We did a leverage buyout and we relaunched Fairchild. And luckily, I made the decision to go with Fairchild because in Portland, Maine, there was a National facility and there was a Fairchild facility. I decided to go to Fairchild, the new startup, which was risky, but I was involved in the second round funding, stock options. Well, those stock options were quite lucrative. And once I started cashing out of those stock options in the tech boom, once we went public, I had the money to really hit the collection hard. And that's what happened. So in 98 through 2005, I had the money from the stock options to build a collection.
Okay.
And again, investing in the tech boom was not on my radar. I was focused on career and doing the die variety work.
All right. So with the die variety work, what how does that, reflect your personality in terms of you started collecting and you got involved in research very quickly. So that doesn't happen by accident. There's got to be something deeper going on there.
Yeah, it gets back to being the father of the yield management systems at Fairchild National. Uh, I was quite well versed in large relational databases and storing information and sifting through those databases to get clues, correlations, linear regressions. And so it was just in my psyche. So when it came to doing the die variety stuff, for me, it was just natural. It was second nature. It was drilling down and assembling data and building a story from the data. And lastly, I wanted to leave a legacy because in the semiconductor business, it's tough to leave a legacy because it's such a dynamic environment. The change is so fast. But in the coin business or the coin hobby, I felt that if I published a book and was a pioneer with the first online die variety reference, this would leave a legacy. And that was important to me.
Yeah. All right. So you were fortunate with Bob Levy to get first shot or an early shot at a seated dime collection. And then you had another opportunity later on when you bought a good portion of Brian Greer's variety set. And was that, strictly something that, you thought would, further your goal of sleuthing all the varieties in the set?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because Brian had done all this work. If I was going to build or construct the follow-on book to his work, the best way to do that was to take on as many of his dimes as possible. And you got to remember at that time, Brian had a phenomenal eye. He had some of the best coins in the business. I mean, circulated material. So for me, it was a no-brainer, and I somehow found the cash to do it.
Yeah.
But that
So
was just another step in the process.
yeah. So like many variety people, sometimes they have to buy coins, for the cause, but it seems like you did pretty well in that category.
Uh, I can go over the safe and pull out a double row 2x2 box full, stuffed with dimes that won't grade. I'm just like any other die variety person. You buy the coin when you can find it, and surfaces is not the imperative. It's I need this because of date position or
Mhm.
some reason, die cracks, but I still have a lot of raw dimes that I need to dispose of.
All right. Okay. All right. Continuing on, there's a niche in your collection that maybe a lot of people don't know about, but you have this run of early San Francisco dimes, high grade, unusually well struck. And a lot of these you picked off when sort of no one else was looking. And we sort of saw Jim Gray was doing the same thing in the quarter series at the same time. He was buying these condition rarities, the early San Francisco pieces. And you were going after something that other people weren't terribly interested in at the time. But, definitely if you look at the CAC price guide or the PCGS price guide, these coins have done phenomenally well.
Oh
Uh,
yeah,
and so the question is, how does today's collector find something similar that is going to be hot 30 years from now?
good luck. You got to remember that back in the late 1990s, the population reports were just not as mature as they are today. I mean, the LSCC, we were still doing our population surveys to get our hands around, survival rates. And today, there is there's almost an overload of information, and it's really difficult to find a series, an undervalued series. I the only answer to the question would be study the CAC population reports carefully. That's where you can find undervalued issues. I mean, any CAC date with a population under 20 merits serious attention. To me, those are bargains.
And I think some of these may be in the gold series. I think you have a coin on your site right now. It's like a 68.5 or something like that. And there's like four CACs.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I want a lot of money for it because I paid a lot for it. But
uh,
yeah, I mean, that I think is the one area that's left is the very low pop cat coins. Seated quarters, I've done a number of presentations on seated quarters, and the run from 1860 to 1870, there's a lot of really low pop pieces there that are still undervalued.
so for a lot of these coins, you had to pick your spots. You were competing against Gardner. He sold, and then a few years later, Hansen came in. But the Hansen set's pretty much complete. Do you think maybe there's another opportunity here for the next generation of dime collectors?
Yeah, buy my set. It's pretty simple. Right now, there's been liquidation. I mean, Tom Bender sold his set recently, and I picked off some of his coins to upgrade some of my later dates that I had not invested much money into. And you got, the Gardner stuff sold in 2013, 14, and that's moved around, and it's very well dispersed at this point. And then you got D.L. Hansen with, an endless pocketbook. I'm not aware. I mean, even as a coin dealer, anybody building a monster set. I know I've got clients who are building seated dime sets, but not to the level of a Gardner or a Hanson. Right now, the rage seems to be AU-58 CACs. I
All
mean,
right.
you saw that Mike Baber sold out his collection, and Mike
Yep.
was one of my top clients. He sold it out to the Tennessee Two-Step collection, who was
Mhm.
also my client. But that seems to be the rage right now, is AU-58 CACs.
Yeah. And with Hansen selling duplicates, maybe it's a good time to form the second finest known set of seated dimes.
Could be.
Yeah.
I mean, if you've got the money, just buy all my Civil War S mints and you will have the finest, you will have coins that Hansen doesn't have.
Yep. All right.
I mean, let me just finish. For years, Tom Bender was hounding me for my Civil War S mints
mhm.
because that's where his set was really weak.
Yeah.
And year after year, he would see me, and I would say, "No, why would I do that?" And then one time it was, "Okay, buy the whole set for $1 million,"
Mhm.
and he shut up.
Yeah.
He stopped pushing me at that point.
All right. Moving on. So, going back to building the Dime website, you were publishing in the Goldberg Journal, obviously attending a lot of coin shows. And what you had really built for yourself is what Dennis Tucker at Whitman calls a platform. So you had
Right.
this platform in the hobby. Um, at what point did you realize that, this platform is something that could be leveraged to start, professionally dealing in coins?
Uh, well, the platform started with the web book in 2004 when I published that. So that was the first step. And then in 2006, I left Fairchild. I got caught up in offshoring, which was the rage at the time. My CEO felt, at that time, I was managing worldwide subcontracted manufacturing for Fairchild. I was always on the road. I was in China, Japan, Hong Kong, Europe. And he looked at my budget and said, "Your group travels too much." I had 13 people, and we just managed all of the outsourced contractors, and we were growing through acquisitions. We had a guy named Keith. Keith was sharp, and he was growing Fairchild by buying up smaller design houses, and each design house had their own contractors somewheres in the world. So my job was just to consolidate all of that manufacturing, bring in all their information systems into the yield system that I had built. And I don't know, where am I going with this? I'm tired. I've been sick for the past 24
Or
hours.
you're talking about your path toward becoming a professional.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's help me again, Len.
And talking about your path towards, having the seated dime web book platform and then leveraging
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
that
Okay,
to
all
become
right.
a
Thank you,
dealer.
thank you, thank you. Yeah. So come 2006, I went off to China. I left Fairchild and I spent 6 years there. And Diane was really pushing me hard to come home. And she said, "Why don't you become a coin dealer?" And I said, "Okay, I'll do that." So I came back in 2012. 2013, I was just trying to figure out what to do. All right, how to be a coin dealer. And 2014, I started gaining traction. And then my son Matt saw what I was doing, and he was in between jobs. And he says, "Can I come work for you? And I'll build you a new module on your website." Because we already had the web book. The web book had been done by Fairchild's marketing contractor. So I had paid them $10,000 to develop, the webbook. So Matt came along and worked for me for 6 months, and he built the other piece. And that became the platform. Then the daily blog was put in as, and we'll talk about that, I think, later. So it just all came together. It was like bolting pieces together to build what we call today this platform that I have. So we got dive variety, we've got we've got the sales archive, a whole bunch of modules. Then Matt, in his spare time, wrote the auction piece of software that now led to GFRC online auctions. So I was very fortunate to have Matt's support, and Matt's not a degree software engineer. He's an environmental engineer, but he just did it as a hobby.
No, no, he's a very smart guy.
Oh, incredibly smart.
All right. With the webbook, you were initially selling this for $100. I know because I bought one. But you decided at some point it would be better if this was all open access. What was your thinking there?
Well, as I had just mentioned, I wanted the webbook to be professionally done. So who else but better than Tim Dietz, who was doing all of Fairchild's marketing and advertising. And I approached him and his staff and I said, can you do this for me and give me a quote? So it was $10,000. It's a lot of money for setting something like this up. So I wanted to recover some of my costs. And back then, the internet was still pretty primitive. I mean, it was not sophisticated like today.
Right.
So I decided to go the CD-ROM route and just burn copies of the website on a CD-ROM and run around and sell them for $100. My first customers were Greg Rowan at Heritage and QDB at A&R, American Numismatic Rarities. So that was the early days. I was just trying to figure out how to recover some of my investment. And with time, we just put it up. I made a decision that this is really making no sense. This has got to become an open platform. So I just took out we had done the website, but it was like membership. You had to have a special password to get in.
Yeah.
At some point I said, that's it. We just take that all out and it's free. If I'm going to enable more dive variety collecting, I can't make it subscription based. It's got to be wide open. And that's what I did.
Yeah. All right. Another aspect of the platform or the website is a daily blog. And I think since you've started the blog, you have probably written more about collecting than anyone in the business, even Q David, because he's kind of retired now. So first of all, did you ever foresee writing more about coin collecting than anyone in the business? And secondly, what does the blog do for the business? What kind of role do you think it plays in the development and sustainability of the business?
Well, the blog came about by benchmarking. So when I was in the semiconductor business, we focused heavily on benchmarking competitors to get ideas within the industry and sometimes outside the industry to solve our problems. And when I started my business, I wanted to somehow differentiate GFRC. And there were two memorable publications that had caught my attention that I benchmarked and I shamelessly stole from. One was, if you remember, when Liz was with JJ Tea Party and Gail, they would always send out their price list. And at the beginning, Gail would always write something about the weather in Massachusetts.
Yep.
And it was always a very nice opening, and I loved it. I loved reading that.
Uh-huh.
The other one was QDB's Rare Coin Review.
Yeah.
which was very powerful, very well written, very powerful. So I said, why don't I merge those two and have a folksy kind of presentation along with the coins? And that's how the daily blog was created. And the idea of publishing daily, now that was monumental, but I figured if I was going to really make this business take off, I would have to write daily. And it became a lifestyle. If I don't write the daily blog, I feel something's wrong. Like this morning, I didn't write it because I was sick.
Huh?
I was in bed, I just had food poisoning last night. Uh, but the blog has allowed me to put all the new purchases and market them early. And many of the coins that I sell right off the blog. They don't even hit the price list.
Mhm.
So it's been an incredibly powerful tool, but it takes a huge commitment because there's many mornings I get up and I just have no idea what the heck I'm going to write till I sit at the computer. And
Yeah.
sometimes it shows. And I
Yeah.
may be rambling a bit, but other
There's a
times there's pieces, there's something prepared.
yeah, there's a parallel here. You basically with the daily exposure of coins, you reduce your cycle time, which you were probably doing in the semiconductor business too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. The secret of the coin business is volume, is
Yeah.
moving coins as fast as you can. And the daily blog really helps enable that.
All right.
Nobody wants a stale coin on a price list.
Yeah. All right. So you've done a ton of international travel, worked with diverse vendors in the semiconductor business. And here's the people question. Do you like working with the coin people more or the semiconductor people more? Uh, or is one of them harder to work with?
Uh, that's a great question, Len. That's probably the best question out of the whole group. In the semiconductor business, I dealt with professionals. Okay. So I dealt with professionals in other companies. A lot of these guys were PhDs, very, very sharp. So it was incredibly stimulating, but culturally, it was really challenging because when you operate in China or in other parts of the world, they can be very slimy. Let's put it that way. The Chinese, for example, they there's the spoken word and the implied word, and if you don't speak Mandarin, any American that goes over there and just uses a translator, you are at a terrible disadvantage because you don't understand the implied word. Uh, but it was incredibly stimulating. I learned so much operating in multiple cultures because the Koreans are different from the Japanese, from the Chinese, from the Hong Kongese. They're all different. They all have their own ways of doing business. And then you get the French, the Europeans, they have their way of doing business. Incredibly challenging, but I learned so much. Now, the coin community, you have professional people and you have very unprofessional people. And that's the frustrating part is you'll have those people that treat me like a podunk coin dealer, if you know what I mean. No respect at all. And if you look at my credentials and what I've accomplished in my life, you got some of these people that come up and just treat me like crap. And it's tough to stomach. But in general, the GFRC community is a great bunch of people. And this will lead, I think, to one of the subsequent questions.
Yeah. So let me ask the question this way. Is your worst semiconductor client worse than your worst coin client?
No, I think the worst clients were coin clients, honestly, just from the lack of respect. Uh, there were some really devious, arrogant, egotistical clients I dealt with in the semi business but they were smart and it was challenging. Uh, in the coin business, you just get some dumb people. Okay, some just dumb collectors who don't know what they're doing, but they believe that they know what they're doing. And it's just so frustrating, especially when you try and help them. I'm being very, very honest here.
Yeah. No, there's something in the general public. I don't know what it is, but people seem to think they know about coins, and they
Yeah,
don't know what they don't know.
exactly, exactly. They don't know what they don't know, and when you try and help them, and that's the way I've always done business. And as a collector, I try and help other collectors, but when they don't listen, after a while, I just write them off.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So speaking of good collecting behavior, you've been a big advocate for collectors taking accountability. So what does that mean to you, and how does that play out in real life?
Accountability means if you're going to collect, you should look at it as a continuous learning opportunity. At least that's how I've always approached life and collecting. Anytime I do something new, a big part of it is for the learning opportunity. Accountability means become accountable for your mistakes. All right. Because you will make mistakes. And if you recognize your mistakes as quickly as possible, you will stop making those mistakes. Some people, and then the key to doing that is selling duplicates. If you buy coins, sell coins. If you're building a set and you're upgrading, sell the duplicates as fast as you can and realize, did you make a mistake with that coin or did you break even? If you held the coin 2, 3 years, 4 years, and you broke even after a dealer's commission, hey, you're doing pretty good. If you're losing 30%, maybe that wasn't such a good coin. So that's what I mean by accountability, is own your mistakes and learn from them. There are some collectors out there who never sell their duplicates. They just can't do it. And I really believe they're afraid of being accountable for what they bought.
Yeah.
They want to leave it to somebody else to deal with. Again, some frank talk, but if you're going to become a better and more sophisticated collector, you have to sell your duplicates. And I tell you, in the GFRC community right now, a lot of people take that advice. I get the duplicates once the upgrades are done, and it warms my heart to see collectors in my stable getting better and better.
Yeah. 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 That's what we call multiplying. So that's a great thing. All right. Uh, we can't conclude this interview without telling a story about Frank Van Valen and the 1863 S dime. So just to set this up, I want to explain the coin to everyone. So this is a PCGS MS64 dime with a gold CAC sticker, fully struck, very unusual for that issue. Arguably the finest known. There's 5 uncs at CAC, the 64 gold CAC, this coin, and then there's a single 65. And then PC has 2 pieces at 65 and a single coin at 65 plus. But I'm guessing your coin is better struck than all of those. Anyway, so with that, for context, take it away.
Okay. Yeah, this is my favorite story. All right, so let's go back to 2004. It was the Pittsburgh A&A, and this is where I debuted the web book. So as I mentioned earlier, I had made appointments with Greg Rowan at Heritage and QDB at American Numismatic Rarities. And so I went to the show with my box of CD-ROMs and and my computer. And back then you had a CD-ROM player on your computer. And I demoed the CD for Greg Rowan, and he says, "Holy God." And he brought in one of his guys, and they looked at it, and they wrote me a check right away. They said, "This is amazing." And then I went over to A&R, and QDB pointed me to Frank Van Valen. So I sat down with Frank, did the same demo, and he just looked at all this and got really, really excited to think that on a CD-ROM there was a dive variety book. I mean, this was 2004.
That was pretty revolutionary at the time.
It was revolutionary because back then you had the Overton book, you had the Greer and I mean the DLRC press books, but you had nothing digital. So Frank was just so excited about it. And right after that, he was cataloging the Frog Run Farm Sale collection. The Frog Run Farm Sale had a huge amount of seated dimes and some high-grade Mint State San Francisco Civil Warrior pieces. When I got the catalog, I was also taken back that Frank had done a whole page on my CD-ROM and discussed it. And he started using my attribution numbers. So it was really a rewarding period. When I opened the catalog and I started looking at all the dates, I said, well, I got to see these because this is where I'm going to strike. So I called up Frank. I said, hey, Frank, can I come over to Wolfsboro? No, this is on Lake Winnipesaukee. It's not that far from me in Maine. And he said, sure, come on over and we'll do a private viewing of all the dimes in the Frog Run collection. So great. So it was a fall day and I get in the Miata, top down, I drive over. And I got there early, had lunch in town, and then went over to the huge mansion. Big, big mansion. Gorgeous. Knock on the front door. Door opens, there's Frank. He says, oh, come on in. So, and this is huge, like, I don't know, great room is the best way to describe it, with all this antique furniture. I mean, like a Victorian mansion. So he says, here, have a seat here, and I'll go get the coins. So he comes back with a couple of double roll boxes of coins, and he goes, oh, wait. And he pulls out 2 lamps, and then he shuts all the curtains. So the room is dark, absolutely dark, except for our 2 lamps. So we sat there for the whole afternoon, and we went through all the dimes. And I would look at him, he would look at him, and then we'd discuss each time. It was such a memorable experience. And the 1863 S dime at that time was in an NGC 63 holder. And it was way undergraded, just phenomenal coin. So I left and I said, Frank, if there's one coin I'm buying in all of this, it's this coin, but I'm going to buy a lot more. He goes, okay. So I left, went back home, and the sale was in Baltimore. So I took the train down to Baltimore and attended the sale. And it was the old time situation where all the bidders were in the room. It's not like today where you got all the online bidding. I mean, this was the old hardcore, everybody's in the room putting up their cards. And in the room was Jason Carter, Laura Sperber, Liz from JJT Party were probably the most notable dealers in the room. And I had Christine, was it Carsdale, sitting next to me. Carsted. She sat next to me. So Frank had set this up where when the auction started, she sat next to me because I think Frank told her I was going to be a player. And so the auction moved along. And I bought a fair number of pieces and I bid stuff up. So then Christine left. And the 1863 S dime comes up. And I thought to myself, I know this coin's going to get run up. And I don't want to be part of running it up. So the bidding starts, and it's going between Liz, Laura, and Jason. The three of them are pushing the coin up. And I'm just sitting back watching. And Frank's calling the auction, which was very nice. And he's looking at me and watching me. And it goes up to $9,000. And Frank's looking at me like, Gerry, when the heck are you going to bid? And he just goes, going once, going twice. I put up my card, 9,500, sold. I was in shock. Everybody in the room was in shock. He never opened up the bidding. He just hammered it at the next increment and gave it to me. Jason Carter, which was the high bid, just turns around, looks at me, and shakes his head. So that was a gift from Frank Van Valen. I mean, I was just in shock. That doesn't happen in an auction. But he gave that coin to me at $9,500.
I think you were lucky
And
that Chris left the room.
yeah, Chris had left the room so he could pull that stunt.
Yeah.
So those were the old days and how it was run. Today that wouldn't happen.
Yeah. Quite a gift. I think the cat guide for that coin now is like 36 or something. It's done very well.
Yeah, it's done very well. I put it in a 4 holder, and when I took my whole collection to John in 2014, he gold capped it. So, and you're right, based on the strike and the luster, I think it's the finest.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the story. It was just like, and I'm not an auction room creature. I'm
Right,
just
right.
an average Joe, and it's like, what the heck just happened?
Yeah. Always nice to have a friend up at the podium.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Oh, that's great. I love that story. All right. We're going to open this up to the audience for questions. I have been muting a lot of people if there was background noise during the interview, so you might want to unmute yourself if you have a question, or we will also, if you want to answer the question in the chat, that's also good. So we'll just give a moment for anything to come in. I have a frog run story. It's much less successful, but I remember being at a frog run sale and the 71cc quarter came up and Jim O'Donnell was sitting in front of me and he turns around and he said, Len, you got to buy this. You got to buy this. You got to buy this. Bid it up, bid it up. Well, I didn't have $80,000 at that time, but so I missed out on that one. But yeah, it's my frog run story and Jim O'Donnell story. All right.
Oh, Len, I got another
Yeah.
good story. I haven't told this one in a long time. So the 1846 dime, the MS-63 CAC,
Yeah.
I could have owned that coin. I came this close to owning that coin.
Mm-hmm.
So I was at a coin show, and Bill Nagel had the coin. And it was just on a PCGS holder, 63. He wanted 25,000 for it, which I had the money.
Uh-huh.
I could have bought it.
Yep.
But Jim O'Donnell was my mentor. So, and he had taught me rarity and all the high grade mint state stuff.
Uh-huh.
So I took the coin over to Jim. I said, Jim, Bill wants to sell me this coin for 25. What do you think? He goes, oh, no, don't do it. So I didn't do it. This is the only time that Jim O'Donnell steered me wrong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because Jim O'Donnell hated Bill Nagel. Bill Nagel hated Jim O'Donnell. And Jim O'Donnell did not want to see me buy a coin from Bill Nagel. If I would have bought that coin, I'd have the finest 46.
Yep.
Instead, it went to Gardner, it went to Hanson.
Right.
I could have had that coin if I would just have trusted my intuition and bought the coin.
Yeah. Yeah. That
In the business. Sometimes you got to make those decisions.
yeah, that story just rings completely true. Yeah. For sure. All right.
Okay.
We do have a question in the chat, which gets back to my first question. People want to know why you're selling. So I think you went over that in pretty
Yeah.
detail.
It's time. I want to take the money and do some other things, buy gold, buy a sports car. Diane and I are going to go do some traveling. Diane's been an incredible sweetheart and supportive of when I worked in China. And the years I'd come home from the semi business, I'd spend the evenings doing research.
Yep.
So it's time for us to enjoy life.
Yep. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Just feel to jump in. You can unmute yourself or type one in the chat. Next question. What is the one coin slipped away that you regret the most?
I just talked about it, the
Okay.
1846.
46. Yeah.
Absolutely, because then to me that would have just made the set that much more special.
Sure.
But that's the one that slipped away.
All right. Another good question is what's your favorite coin in the set?
Oh my God.
And it might not even be the most valuable coin.
I have many favorite coins in the set because of the backstories. Uh, the first one that always comes to mind is the 74cc in the PCGS XF 45 CAC holder. That was my third 74cc. My first one I bought early on. I had a great uncle who passed, and he left me like $5,000 in his will. And that's how I was able to buy my first 74cc from Brian Greer. And it had been a Larry Briggs retone special.
Uh-huh.
And I sold that and I bought another one, like a fine. And then there was an auction, and there was this piece in an annex holder, old white annex holder. And I ended up bidding really strong, and I got that coin. And then I crossed it into the current 45 holder, and it cacked. It's just a phenomenal coin. And the key date in the series, and it's just as original as it comes. And I've looked at CC dimes, the 71s, 2s, 3s, and 4s. Nearly all of them have been messed with.
Yep.
In one way or another, they've been messed with. And if you look at my CCs, they haven't been messed with. And that's what I'm really most proud of the collection. Like the 71cc is another real favorite. That came out of Tim Cook's, Dr. Tim Cook's collection in 2005 at the Central States sale. He had to sell his collection to put his daughters through college. And I swooped in and I bought a number of his pieces. And the 71cc, I got told by a lot of people, was the best piece in his whole collection. So those are two memorable. The 45.0 and the 43.0 dimes are
Yep.
also memorable. I bought those as a pair
Mm.
from Kevin Zeitler.
Ah, sure.
So Kevin was helping me in the early days of the research, and he had a ton of 1840 dimes in better grades. So he sent them to me. And that became the basis by which I was able to do the 40 no drape dimes. I mean, in terms of die variety analysis. And so I sent them back to him. And then he calls me and he says, "Hey, Gerry, I got a nice 43.0 and 45.0 dimes. Do you want them?" And I said, "Sure." So he sends them to me. And I just looked at them both, and you can't believe what I paid for those two coins back then. So this is the mid 1990s.
Yeah.
And today, the 43.0 is like the third finest, and the 45.0 is second finest, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But there was just those opportunities again, and those two did not get away. I got those.
Okay. It's worth noting on the CCs, you've got the four early dates. They're all cacked. All of those have cack populations less than 20 coins. And as far as I know, it's the only set that's been sold that has those pieces, all four of them cacked. Maybe there's another one out there, but this is the only one that comes to mind. Um, so, and I'm sure when you sold your other two 74 cc's, you did very well with them.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The 74 cc's continue to move up in value. If you've got extra cash hanging around, that's a great place to park money. Is in 74 in 71 through 74 cc dimes. They gotta be original though.
Right.
Right, they gotta be original. So CAC pieces are the way to go, but they've got to have eye appeal.
Yeah. All right. Next question. I don't know if you want to answer this or not, but I'll put it out there. Have you been contacted by known high-end collectors about the upcoming sale?
Have I been contacted privately?
Yes.
No. In other
Okay.
words, nobody's contacted me to buy the whole collection outright. Let's put it
Okay.
that way. No,
All
I
right.
have not been contacted.
Fair enough. All right. Oh, here's a good question. With all the stories about the coins, do you care about who gets your coins? Do you want people in the community to get them?
Yes, I want the collecting community to get the coins, not the dealers. As a coin dealer, I have learned who the crack out guys are. The crack out guys will take coins, dip them, do things to coins to get them in higher grade holders. This set is prime for that type of activity. There are a lot of undergraded coins in the set. I'm a purist. I have left the coins in their original holders as they were bought. The CAC results speak for themselves. If the dealers swoop in on these, I know what's going to happen to them. They're going to get cracked out. They're going to get upgraded. A lot of them will get upgraded. Some of them will get dipped, and God knows what else they'll do to them. So I really want to see them go to other collectors, but they're expensive. I mean, these are, very valuable coins. I hope they go to other collectors, but at the same time, when I make a decision to sell the set, I'm selling the set.
Yep. All right. Next question. I know you've been asked this a few times in the past. Is there any thought to ever do a print edition of the web book?
Absolutely not. No. Do you know how many pages it would be?
Probably a couple thousand.
Yeah.
No,
No.
more than
No,
that.
no, no. It makes no sense. I mean, if you look at Bill Bogus, multiple volumes,
Yeah, yeah,
all right, just take that and pile them, stack them on top of each other. That's what it would look like.
yeah,
No,
yeah. Because
no.
a lot of these,
Why? It makes no sense.
yeah, I mean, a lot of these common dates have 50 die marriages. I mean, that's like a 50-page book right there if you have good pictures.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's
All right. All right. Any other questions? Just feel to chime in. You can unmute yourself or type it in the chat.
Yes, I have one more,
All right, go ahead, Dale.
and I think one of the biggest contributions that you've made in this whole thing, and is truly part of your legacy, but you haven't said anything about, is the open registry.
oh, oh, yeah, yeah. I haven't talked about that. Yes, well, there's a couple of things that I've done. One is the top 100. So after I published the web book in 2004, a gentleman named Michael Fay, I remember it distinctly, at an LSCC meeting, he pulled me aside. And no, he was working on the VAMs. And he pulled me aside and said, Gerry, if you want to get the dye varieties to take off, you have to do the top 100.
Yeah.
And I took his advice and I did it. So, I got most of it right. I think I made one mistake out of the 100, but the rest of it, I think, has been a great goal. Like for Dale and Tim Cook are probably the two most avid top 100 collectors, but there's been others. The open set registry, that was developed just for the community. When I originally did it on the first version of the website, it was wide open. You could put raw coins. I hated the fact that NGC only had NGC coins and PCGS only had PCGS coins. It was really self-serving, but of course they're businesses. As a collector, I just wanted to open it up and let people put raw coins and annex coins, any holded coins, so that it was just more fun and a place to publicize their collections. And that was another module that Matt wrote. So he wrote the new open registry that has been really popular. The coding was pretty primitive, and the maintenance of it was just onerous, and we just can't update it anymore because Matt's just so consumed with his Thermo Fisher career that he doesn't have time.
Yeah.
But it was just another part of the platform where collectors could participate.
Yeah, and I think with respect to the top 100, those were picked up by PCGS and NGC, and I think that was huge.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody picked it up, and yeah. And then when CAC grading started, I put the top 100 into their database so that they recognized it immediately. I was the first guy, other than some cherry pickers, to put those varieties into their database.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So it's, collecting dye varieties is a true specialized pursuit, but it is also an incredibly educational pursuit because if you collect dye varieties, you have to understand the dye preparation process and what was going on in the mint.
Right.
All right. And all the errors that the dye sinkers were making. And you develop a much better appreciation of Liberty seeded coinage once you understand the varieties.
Yeah, if you talk to somebody like JD, John Danreuther, he has just looked at so many millions of coins. It's like he sort of channels exactly what was going on with the engravers and the coiners and the die
Oh,
sync.
yeah.
And it's like he can just read it without having been there or knowing anybody, but he just looks at the coins and he just can tell you all these amazing things.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right. Next question. Are there any aspects of grading, recognizing original surfaces that you still struggle with or struggled with early on?
Oh, man, that's a good question. Uh, all right, let's take it one step at a time. Color. Let's deal with circulated coins, circulated silver coins. They can be gray. So that's one part of the equation. But it's not only the color of the coin, it's also the sheen or the surfaces. And this is something a lot of collectors have a real hard time with. A truly original circulated silver coin should have zero gloss. It should be a dull surface, a dull metallic surface. The minute you have any type of sheen, the coin's been cleaned. Even though it may be a nice gray color, it's been cleaned. That took me a while to figure out, but you know, after you look at enough coins, you learn pretty quick. Mint
Yeah.
state coins, colors. There are a ton of mint state coins that have been retoned. A lot of them are in PCGS and NGC holders. So and especially those nice ring toned pieces, they're beautiful, but they're not original. Sometimes coins look too good, which means they've been worked on. Nature does not work that way. If you look at true gems on the top collections, what do true gems look like? Sometimes they've got uneven toning, which is natural. That's how nature is. Nature just does not make perfect red and blue rings. You know, it just doesn't work that way. So you have to teach yourself colors, and there's certain colors that are just wrong. Original silver coin should be gray. You got to be careful of golds, because golds typically is retoning. So that in a nutshell is what you learn over time. I remember Tom Bender. Tom was also collecting half dimes, and he walked over to my table at a coin show, and he had a couple of half dimes in like 7, and the colors were these vivid purples and oranges, and I just looked at him like, "What?" And he goes, "Are these colors real?" I go, "No, they're not real. Silver just doesn't tone that way. At least for me, it doesn't. I mean, to me, it was a red flag, and he didn't buy the coins. So be careful. Be careful. Look at CAC coins, especially CACG graded coins, because they're so strict about that. And you will quickly learn what original toning looks like."
Yeah, I would say you and I were both fortunate to be mentored by Brian Greer early on and learned a lot of this from him.
Yeah, I also learned from Chris Pilliard.
Yeah, so it just emphasizes the role of having mentors and just people that you can bounce questions off of.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we're getting to the end of the questions here. Um, I think that'll wrap it up. So, Gerry, thanks a lot. This was fascinating, really. I didn't know.
Yeah. All right. Let me just make one
Yeah.
commercial announcement.
Uh-huh.
So the set will be both Aaron's Newtown halves and my dimes will be on display at the fun show. And the first auction session is January 9th, closing on the 26th. You go to the auction link on the website and you can see all the coins in both sets. And now there's sequenced by the auction sessions. And I really want to see these go to collectors. So if you need terms, just let me know. It's not about getting instant money. I'd rather do terms and know that coins are going to collectors. Because I mean, I love my dimes. I just want to see them go to some fine homes.
Yep. Absolutely.
Okay.
All right. Thanks a lot, Gerry, and hope everyone can make it to the fun show and get a look at these coins.
Alrighty.
All right. See everyone later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye now. Thanks for attending.